part 3 of a series that I have been doing. It's called Increase Your Brain Power with Carbs.
Welcome to the Restorative Longevity Podcast, where we share how to increase your quality of life while also increasing your longevity. Now let's welcome our host, Jimmy Yen, also known as the AccuSensei. Jimmy is a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, nutritionist, and restorative longevity expert dedicated to guiding you on your journey to vibrant health and lasting wellness.
Increase Your Brain Power with Carbs, part 3. And this is the last part. We'll finish up this topic and we'll move on to the next topic after this episode. So last part, you need carbs to increase your brain power. Your brain depends upon glucose, not sugar, glucose specifically. This is a summary, and so you need more carbs. You do need to eat carbs. Now, for those of y'all who are trying to lose weight, I know you're probably doing all these low carb or no carb diet, like ketogenic, carnivore diet, and they help you lose weight. They're great for losing weight. Not so great on your brain health, because your brain only functions on glucose, on carbs, specifically glucose. The ketogenic diet is to trick your brain, is to deprive your body of glucose, so carbs, so that it forces your body to break down fats to form ketone bodies. And your brain can use ketone bodies as a source of energy, but it's a crappy source. And it is like pumping your car full of watered down gasoline instead of premium filtered gasoline, which is glucose. So when you go into these ketogenic diets, carnivore diets, where you're doing high protein, high fat, and you're taking away all the carbs, you're starving your brain of power, of energy. It helps you lose weight, maybe it helps you look better, but brain-wise, you're actually functioning worse, right? Maybe initially you feel like, oh man, I feel more clear and I feel great, my brain's clear. Yes, initially when you do those diets, but eventually your brain starts to get foggy, it starts to, decrease in function, the abilities, your energy starts to drop. It always happens. Why? Because your brain only depends on, your brain can only function on glucose, which is from carbs. Okay, so let's continue. Why? Now, yes, you need carbs, and then I'm not telling y'all to go out and eat 25, cookies. Get some cakes, some donuts, some churros, which are really good. Okay, I'm not telling you to do that. All of those are sugar. They're not necessarily glucose. Do they eventually turn to glucose? Yes. But they're not, majority of it is not glucose. So I'm not telling you to go hit those type of carbs, simple carbs, right? Because I'm gonna flip the script a little. Your brain needs carbs, but it can be overloaded with sugar as well. It can be overloaded with glucose. So your brain needs glucose to function properly, but at the same time, it also can't get too much glucose. Right? This is all in equilibrium. Your body does things in equilibrium. You can say balance, it's equilibrium. So what happens when you flood your body of too much glucose, like you eat a lot of carbs, right? Especially simple carbs. What's gonna happen? If your blood sugar, number one, it will raise your blood sugar. If it raises your blood sugar, it causes a number of things. It causes chronic inflammation. So when you have elevated blood sugar, you have chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation is the root cause of all chronic disorders, right? Chronic inflammation. Now, when you increase too much glucose into your bloodstream, it causes you to develop insulin resistance, which eventually you will be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, right? Of course, it'll cause all these joint pains, clogged arteries, stroke, and so forth. But all of this increases your risk of dementia, which means it increases your risk of losing your brain, losing your ability to think, right? So high blood sugar, more dementia, right? And so this is common sense, right? But for those of y'all who may not think that's common sense, let's go to research. There is a research done that shows when you get older, like when we're young, we're in our, when I say young, under 40, right? Under 40 years old, your body's still working great. It's still, you're like, You're like, hey, Jimmy, I'm eating all this donuts, but I still feel great. I don't have diabetes, but I'm eating donuts every single day. Well, that's because your body is functioning still. You got good genetics, number one, and your body's functioning really good. You're still young. But as you get older, if you're elevated sugar, if you still have elevated blood sugar, that increases your risk of dementia. Okay, so there was a research done. They tracked over 2,000 elderly people. So old people, okay, they didn't say the age, but it was elderly people. So they tracked 2,000, more than 2,000 old people over 7 years. And they were trying to see if there was a correlation between high blood sugar and dementia. Okay, this is what they found. They found that those old people over the 7 years that they tracked them, over 7 years, the ones with the higher blood sugar, they had poor cognitive outcomes later in life. So as they got older, their ability to think quickly, their ability to process information became worse. Okay? None of the participants, none of these old people, these elderly people, when they started the study to begin with, none of them had dementia. However, as they studied them over the 7 years, the elderly, the people who had high blood sugars, developed dementia. Just over 7 years, right? So just for having high blood sugar, they developed dementia. Before, when they first started the study, they did not have dementia. Dementia is losing your memory. You can't, you're losing your mind. You feel like you're losing your mind. So before the study, all these elderly people were fine. They could think clearly, they could think quickly, all of that. But just over a 7-year period, the ones that had high blood sugar, they started losing their mind. They started losing their memory, okay? So the conclusion is, the higher your blood sugar is over time, the higher the risk you're gonna lose your mind. You're the higher risk of you developing dementia and Alzheimer's. Right. So they also found that even the elderly people whose blood sugar was considered normal, which is less than 120 milligrams per deciliter, even those that were considered normal, they still had an increased risk of dementia. They still started losing their mind. A little slower than the higher blood sugars, but they still started losing their mind. Okay. So sugar levels, what's the consensus? I mean, what's the conclusion? The sugar levels that are the rest of our bodies are that we can tolerate, right? The rest of our body can tolerate a sugar level of 120 milligrams per deciliter, right? Your brain can't tolerate it. Your brain is super sensitive. So you're overloading your brain of too much sugar. It causes inflammation, right? Inflammation in your brain makes you dumb. It also can cause strokes. So this is, even though I just did 2 episodes about, hey, you need glucose for your brain power, but too much of a good thing can hurt you too. There's a saying in Chinese, 水能覆舟也能沉舟. I think that's what it is, right? I think I said it right. But basically, the translation is, water can float the boat, but it could also sink the boat, right? So just because sugar is glucose, not sugar. Glucose is needed for your brain, does not mean you need to overload your brain with glucose, because it cause an increased risk of dementia, which is losing your brain, losing your memory. You start forgetting things. You can't think quickly, and you're like, man. When you hear someone say, hey, man, my brain is just not as sharp as it was 20 years ago. Ask that person, what is your blood sugar? I bet you they have high blood sugar. They have elevated blood sugar. Say, I'm not talking about 200 blood sugar. This research said, even at 120 milligrams per deciliter blood sugar, you are going to start to lose your brain power, okay? So the next time you have a friend that asks you, hey, man, my brain's just not as quick anymore, right? Ask them what their blood sugar is. And if they haven't measured it, go tell them to measure it, okay? You may be saving their brain. Okay, an MRI. So MRI of another study, MRI of the brain showed that dementia-free elderly, so the elderly who do not have dementia, from an MRI scan, Okay, they show that with high sugar levels, that when they increase their sugar levels, it decreased their memory performance and it caused the brain to shrink. So let me repeat that. We've got elderly people that went through an MRI brain scan. They have no dementia, okay, not yet. And then they started raising their blood sugar levels by eating all this sugar craps. We're in the holidays, you're eating cookies, cakes, all that is killing your brain, okay? And so elderly people, no dementia. Eat the cookies and bakes and all the white carbs, white bread, white noodles, white rice, all that stuff. It caused their brain to shrink. It made them dumber, okay? So if I can emphasize, okay, of staying away from these processed sugars and simple carbohydrates, right? So what do you eat? Let's say you have a brain, let's say you love sugar. What can you eat? Well, there are other things that you can do, right? I'm gonna go over the foods that you can eat. I went over on episode 2, but I'm gonna go a little more. Let's say you have a sweet tooth. Well, did you know that you could eat? This is where dark chocolate comes into play, right? But dark chocolate without sugar, okay? Here it is, 70% or higher, organic dark chocolate has a low glycemic load, which makes it satisfying without the sugar rush, okay? So how do you know which foods to eat? So nutritionists, dietitianists, they have, the industry has created these measurements. One is called the glycemic index, and the other one is called glycemic load, okay? Glycemic index, what is a glycemic index? By definition, it's a nutrition rating system that ranks foods based on their ability to affect blood sugar. Okay, glycemic index is a nutrition rating system that ranks foods based on their ability to affect blood sugar. So if a food metabolizes quickly, so if a food that you eat turns into sugar very quickly, okay, and is absorbed in quickly, it will have a high glycemic index. So glycemic index sometimes is notated as GI. So when you're looking through foods, you can type in, you can Google this, what's the glycemic index of this food? If it's high, that means it turns into sugar very quickly, and it means it will raise your blood sugar very quickly, and it will make you dumber quicker. High glycemic index, dumber, okay? Low glycemic index, smarter, okay? Let's use that. Now, the other term that nutritionists, dietitians use is glycemic load. This is a similar system that ranks foods not only in terms of how quickly they produce a sugar response, but also by the amount of fiber a food contains, okay? The more fiber, the lower the overall food's effect on insulin, okay? So let's talk about, so this is glycemic load, okay? It tells you how much fiber food contains. The more fiber a food contains, the less it will spike your sugar, the less it will cause increased inflammation throughout your whole body and your brain. So you want foods in high fiber, okay? So, the white stuff, those have almost zero fiber, right? And this is what they mean by complex carbs, simple carbs. Simple carbs have virtually no fiber. Complex carbs have lots of fiber, which slows down, your brain, it slows down your body's ability to break down the food into sugar. And so it gets absorbed slower. So what are some examples of complex carbs, starches with more fibrous foods, right? They result in less of a blood sugar spike. Sweet potatoes and yams. Sweet potatoes and yams are fiber rich. Berries, grapefruits, vegetables, legumes like garbanzo beans, black beans, lentils, whole grains with their husk still in. These are all high fiber and they do not spike your blood sugar, okay? So if you have a sweet tooth, the trick is to load up on fiber. So eat a lot of fiber before you eat. So here's a No, I'm not encouraging you to eat sugar, okay? But let's just say you cannot control it. You're like, man, crazy. I gotta get my fix, right? So before you pop that sugar into your mouth, eat something that has a lot of fiber. Eat a lot of vegetables, which is vegetables. Vegetables have lots of fiber. Eat some fruits, right? Before you pop that donut. Sounds crazy, right? But again, instant gratification, if you're looking for just, hey, I see that donut, I want to eat that donut, instant gratification, you're not realizing the consequence of that instant gratification is doing on your brain. The instant gratification of eating that donut, eating that piece of pie, cake, cookie, whatever, sweet stuff, right? You're damaging your brain faster. And this is the youngins, like I said, under 40, you don't have to worry about this. I mean, you do, but you don't. But if you're in your 60s and above, right, you need to worry about these. You need to start thinking about this because you ain't regenerating those brain cells that you're killing, right? So if you want faster dementia, faster to Alzheimer's, continue to do what you're doing. But if you don't, you want to eat fibrous foods. So fibers are divided into soluble fibers and insoluble fibers. Insoluble fibers, they are dissolved. And the foods that contain soluble fibers, they're dissolved and your body's able to break them down. But it breaks it down into like this gooey stuff, this gel-like stuff, texture, right? Which slows down your digestion. So both soluble and insoluble fiber slow down your digestive, slow down the digestive process in the sense of it takes longer to digest, which is what you want because you don't want your body to just be able to digest things super fast and it spikes your blood sugar, right? So both types of fibers slow it down. Soluble fiber slows it down by making it breaks down, your body breaks down the soluble fiber into this gel-like texture, which slows down digestion and it makes you actually feel fuller longer. So if you're hungry all the time, side note, eat something that has soluble fiber, okay? Soluble fiber like blueberries, oatmeal, Brussels sprouts. They have soluble fibers, okay? Insoluble fibers, your body's not able to break them down. So you have all these, it can't break it down. So guess what? These are insoluble fibers, bulk up your stool. It allows you to have your stools to be bigger, right? I like to say you need bulk in your stool. Why? Because in your intestines, if you only eat soluble fiber or no fiber, the food is almost like this. It's like poop, right? It's like so small, right? So it does a number of things. It forces your intestines to have to squeeze harder, right? And work harder. When your intestines, when they normally should only have to squeeze like this, right? You're forcing them to squeeze like this because you're eating no fiber or soluble fiber, right? What happens, let's say I go lift weights. What happens to my bicep if I keep on making it work out, if I keep on lifting weights? My biceps eventually get bigger, right? It is no different with your intestines. If you force your intestines to lift extra weights, the walls of your intestines, right, become thicker. Why does that matter? Because number one, then now it is harder to push the waste through your intestines because the lumen or the hole in your intestine has become smaller. It has become smaller because the walls have become thicker. The walls have become thicker because you forced it to work to lift weights more. And here's a sign to let you know without having to have a scope, up your butt, is the size of your poop. If the size of your poop is about this size, it could mean the walls of your intestines are inflamed or the muscles have swollen up, right? And that's because you haven't been eating fiber. So to fix it, you eat fiber, okay? So that's a whole nother topic, but I just want to give that extra tidbit. So insoluble fiber, right? bulks up the waste, and it's like a cleaning truck. It's like a Mack truck. It goes through your intestines. As it goes through your intestines, it has to clean the walls of your intestines. If you don't have this cleaner go through the walls of your intestines, that's when you start developing terminologies, labels called diverticulitis, diverticulosis, right? You get colitis. You get all these inflammation of your intestinal tract. You get Crohn's disease, right? So that's the importance of eating both of fibers, soluble and insoluble. Now, how can you get both at the same time? Fruits and vegetables. Those are the best source. Fruits and vegetables have soluble and insoluble fiber, okay? So again, what's the conclusion? To make your brain happy, to make you smarter, to increase your brain power, these are the foods that you want to focus on. You want to focus on low glycemic foods. Low glycemic foods and high fiber foods. Low glycemic, high fiber should be the main source of your carbs to glucose in your diet, okay? Things that are high glycemic, you need to eat them very infrequently, right? So that's the last bit of this series of carbs that power your brain, that increase your brain power. If you missed the first two, you can go and subscribe to our channel. First of all, if you haven't subscribed, get your friends and families to subscribe. But if you missed the first two, go to our channel and you'll see part 1 and part 2, and it will tell you it'll be talking why you need carbs for your brain power, right? So if you want to prevent yourself from getting Alzheimer's, dementia, and just becoming dumber overall, you want to make sure you supply your brain with the right foods. And glucose is the right food, but you can't do it in excess. Again, too much will cause inflammation. Too much glucose, both extremes are terrible for you. Not enough glucose, you're starving your brain of nutrition, of energy. Too much glucose, you're killing your brain with inflammation. So you need just the right amount. And episode part 1 and part 2, I told you how many grams of glucose you actually need every day for your brain to be at optimal levels. So go back and watch those two. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you from watching. Subscribe. And I'll see you next week. Same time, same channel, 8:30 Central Standard Time, Sundays, same bat channel, same bat time. Peace.
This episode is sponsored by Achieve Integrative Health, the #1 acupuncture clinic in the US. We're grateful for their support in helping us bring you the Restorative Longevity podcast.